Respected Mr. Louis Herbert, former Cambridge City Councillor leader, and my dear friend Mr. Piketty, Honorable Deputy Mayor of Cambridge, and my dear friends. I am very much privileged and delighted to be here to make a speech regarding revival of Nehruism at this prestigious institution. When the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. What would have been in the mind of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru when he spoke those famous words in the midnight of 14th August 1947? He was taking a big challenge ever taken by any prime minister in the 20th century. A new nation, old civilization, new subcontinent, full of hopes, resources, but shackled and exploited by the imperialist foreign rulers. Hopes were unlimited, but problems all around, like partition, joining together the union of states in India. Any human being would have been felt jittery. But Panditji was not. He loved India more than anything else, and India loved him more. There was a mutual trust and commitment between the people of India and their Prime Minister. India never had such a relationship to any other leader or any other Prime Minister which she had with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Panditji was a curious mix of contradictory characteristics. He was very practical political leader, restrained prime minister, a dreamer, but a poet within. He was thoroughly so Indian, but at the same time, he was truly a world citizen. It is perhaps because of this mixture that allowed him, that gave him courageous ideas to shape the modern India and to stir optimism to implement some of them. His long journey to discover India was a long-term endeavor. His modern mind and statesmanship was very much different, and his exposure with international leaders, wonderful people and other institutions opened up the modern civilization to him. He was sure about one thing, that it was the right time to step out from the old to the new. He was thinking about that, always thinking about that. It is his conviction and unfailing mind, because the need of the hour that led to a unique building up of the socialist, democratic, secular republic in the land of 340 million people at that time, who belonged to varying ethnic communities, who spoke hundreds of different languages. But at that time, in the height of the Soviet hegemony and Chinese form of communism, and after the situation, post-World War situation, it was his sheer boldness and commitment that led to a unique experiment of combining socialism with democracy. Those times, the Soviet Union was following the communist attitudes, but there was no place for democracy. The leadership of United States in the post-World War situation, they followed the capitalism with the democracy. But actually, Nehru wanted to give the best for India. That is why he mixed the opposites. Thus born the idea of a socialist and truly democratic country working on a planned mixed economy. Look at it. It's a rare experiment of combination of opposites. Mixed economy, democracy, socialism. When poverty was the biggest reality staring on the country, what then a prime minister do? Only one option: produce more food. Panditji believed that boosting agriculture through mechanization, then irrigation, and by implementing various forms of farming. Actually, he wanted big hydroelectric projects. For an emerging economy, the power is highly needed. He wanted to give power to the industries and to the remote homes in the remote villages of India. He wanted schools, colleges, and hospitals, at least in each district. And he concentrated on, Baiju rightly pointed out that the core of the Nehruism is planning. That is the predominant feature of Nehruvian socialism. At the first 5-year plan, what was the core of the planning theme? It was agriculture, because the first priority was to give food to the poor people of India. And the second 5-year plan, he concentrated on the industry, in the public sector. Why he started public sector? Why he promoted public sector? The private sector was not able to invest on industry. The private investment was below 10%. So he wanted to make the public sector more. Now there is a difference between planning and project. Nehruvian socialism concentrated on the planning. What is the salient features of planning? In a complex society like India, there are more than 20-25% people are backward communities and the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, those who were denied education, employment for the last many centuries. So when we constituted Constitution of India, we provided reservation for the scheduled castes and scheduled communities and to the backward community. When there is a planning, there will be separate provision for the backward community and the scheduled caste and scheduled community. And in the planning, there should be priority. What I said, the first 5-year plan, the priority was agriculture. In the second 5-year plan, the priority was industry. And he concentrated on another thing. There are regional differences. What is the situation in South India? That may not be the situation in Northeast. And our cities and towns, entirely different from the remote area, villages in remote India. So in the Nehruvian socialism, the planning is very important. Now the governments are giving up the idea of planning. They are all behind projects. Projects do not have any priority. They are not addressing the poor people of India. They are only projects, huge amount, getting huge kickbacks. That is the difference between the project and the planning. And Nehru was seeing the world, especially the USSR progress that time. He wanted big industries to come up in India. He wanted big power projects like Bhakra and he wanted fertilizer companies to promote the agriculture. He wanted to expand the Indian railway network because infrastructure is very important for the development of an emerging economy. He was the driving force behind the India space program. Private and public sector working together. The planning commission made the framework and government agencies like public sector undertakings implementing the projects and programs. That was the core of the planned mixed economy for Nehru's socialist India. The opponents called it a copy of the Soviet plan. Some said that this is only licensed Raj. Somebody said that this was an impossible hybrid. Call it anything, but it worked very well at the initial stage. What made Nehru's version of socialism very unique is his unshakable commitment to democracy and freedom. His socialism was evolutionary. It was no dogma. That's a difference. You may ask questions to me. It was no dogma. It was no permanent structure. It has to adapt, be flexible in change and redefine itself. Nehru believed in inclusiveness at all levels, at all aspects of running the country. He could never exclude anyone or anything from an ecosystem called India. He only had suspicion of the far-right fundamentalistic forces and the unscientific attitudes. He always kept a scientific temper in his mind. You have to imagine that time. He always kept a scientific temper in his mind. He wanted communication, consultation, dialogue, so that he believed that our democracy stays alive. Nehru's worldview celebrated variety and diversity. He knew that India is all about differences bound together by a strong sense of oneness. Different languages, different states, different culture, different dress, but that strong sense of oneness has to go together. His administration was egalitarian. No one can be kept away from any opportunity. Nehru was an active man always. It reflected in the way his government functioned. Rationality, that is also a very important point. Rationality can be termed as the core Nehruvian administration and running of the country. He believed in planning things out, and thus the Planning Commission of India was born. What a great institution it was, Planning Commission. Nehru saw the government in a lead role, not as a facilitator. Government should be in a lead role, but an active participant. Now the governments are withdrawing from the lead role. They are all acting as a facilitator. He believed that the government should act as a lead role, not as a facilitator. He considered public sector as people's platforms to create wealth and jobs for the country. Nehru's socialism was a philosophy, it was a value system and an impetus for liberal democracy. Along with the Navaratna industries in the public sector, numerous other institutions were created at the time of his prime ministership. The Sahitya Kendra, Sahitya Academy, the Literature Academy, the National Museums, IIMs, Indian Institute of Management, Indian Institute of Technologies, the Institute of Science, the national laboratories. Look around anywhere in the country, there is a Nehru mark there. He of course had a special liking for the Soviet model development, but he never agreed with the one party, one book rule. He followed some development perspectives of the then USSR, but never accepted one party rule or a book rule. His version of socialism was based on not based on class war. USSR socialism is based on class war. He never believed in that. He did not accept the destructive divide of the society at any name. He also did not approve of, be it an individual or a party, talking down to the people and coercing them. He was such true liberal that he valued freedom of the individual as the most important thing in a democratic system. It clearly reflects. It is the idea of the national movement also. We have a 5,000 years of history. We have been following those things. Our national movement was the continuation of the inclusiveness. Our constitution is the product of that thinking and that thought process. Freedom of speech and the options of a free world were the fuel required for Nehru's dream of socialist world to move on. He wanted free and fair elections. He wanted multi-party system. He was such a noble and learned person that he imbibed values from his education and his career and his country and held it close to heart. He has trust and utmost respect to Gandhi. Gandhi, along with his modern education, can be considered as the biggest influences in his life. Because of the above mentioned reasons, never ever tried to replace imperialism with the left brand one party hegemony. That is one party hegemony. Nehru, the socialist, wanted a government-led, participatory, planned economic system. He worked on it very hard. He knew that imperialism can be fought and brought down only by using democracy and socialism. He knew that only freedom and liberalism can tackle the fundamental problems of modern world societies. Secularism as his only religion. He was dogmatically a science man, I told earlier. His aim in life was to make India into a self-reliant, self-respecting democracy. Non-alignment was his answer to the Cold War days. He never got swayed to any side. He stood at par with all world leaders. That was the time of changing the world order also. After the Second World War, the post-World War scenario is very important. After the 1930 Great Depression, then the Second World War, and the impact of the First World War, that you know the things. Then after the Second World War, the post-World War scenario, all the world economic order, social order, political order have been changed. Decolonization happened. Then the rise of China, fall of the Soviet Union, everything was there. But at the time of Nehru, it was Cold War. He was a confident and self-respecting man. He was not a fanatic nationalist. He was always talking about nationalism. Now, across the world, some of the leaders are always talking about nationalism. That nationalism differs from Nehru's nationalism. These type of dictators are talking about nationalism, that is not nationalism, that is hyper-nationalism. That is the narrow-minded way to acquire the power and to keep the power. Hyper-nationalism is entirely different from Nehru's nationalism. And Nehru wanted India to exist in a multi-dimensional world and retain her independence, politically and economically, to make India self-sufficient. He in fact made unique and independent trajectory for modern socialist society. In Nehru's India, the working class got a special protection and respect. You just go through the legislations made in the parliament, the Minimum Wages Act for the laborers in India, the Industrial Dispute Act, the Bonus Act, all the legislations made at the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was labor lenient. Now all the labor legislations are made in India and rest of the world are for the corporates. Corporate lenient legislations that cannot be called as labor legislations. But Panditji was very particular about the legislations should be labor lenient. All those legislations were just like that. He wanted equality for women, give them equal rights and opportunities. He never wanted any sectarianism or any form of discrimination on the basis of caste, religion or gender. This idea became the theme of the Article 14 of the Constitution of India. That is Article 14, equality before law. But 76 years into democracy and freedom, India unfortunately is moving away from Nehruvian values. We are seeing religion being put at the center stage of politics and governance. Mr. Baiju Titala asked me some important questions. If he was around us, what would have been done by Nehru? Nehru would have stood guard as he did for Jamia Millia University to our secular values and saved deep scars being inflicted to our nation's soul. Nehru would have talked and acted like true world leader. He would have been the champion to protect our Mother Earth at the time of this climate change. If he was around, I am sure he would have been at the Egypt border with other world leaders and making sure the food, medicines and blankets reach Gaza where they are suffering, not the weapons and bombs. The world would have listened to his clear and sense voice because he was so strong, reassuring and firm on his words and deeds. Nehru the humanitarian and his secular and democratic socialism is more relevant today in this age of conflict and war, wrong priorities, growth of far-right movements, right extreme movements, popping up of uneducated leadership, uncultured leadership around the world, climate change and agrarian crisis, sidelining and further marginalizing of the poor, where the inequality is increasing and the differences, gap between the haves and have-nots are increasing day by day. And underprivileged, silencing dissent, the misuse of technology and the unimaginable growth of the dark side of the virtual world. Nehru today is a model, a dream and an open book for us. He taught us how to learn. how to listen, see, assimilate, accept change, and evolve better. And above all, he taught us how to treat another voice, another idea, another philosophy, and with respect and regard. That was a difference he showed all of us. After 76 years of dream, plex experiment, where is India today? And does this dream of Nehru has any relevance in 21st century? In an age when India is swiftly moving away from all Nehruvian principles and a world threatened by the idiosyncrasies of far-right dictators masquerading as elected presidents and prime ministers, I do believe that Nehru is more relevant than ever before. Let that light may lead us. With these words, thanking you, I am concluding my words. Thank you very much.
What a terrific discourse. Now, over to my comrade and mentor, Louis Herbert. Thank you.
So as Beju introduced me, I'm proud to have been a councillor and a community leader for 25 years, but that's not because I ever sought a huge amount of power. It is about everybody working together, and that's going to be one of my themes. And I'm likely to repeat some of the excellent thoughts that Mr. Satheesan used, because I agree with almost everything he said. So I knew my politics when I was 11 years old. That doesn't mean I haven't changed or thought, but I think we have to each carry a message. And we have to recognise, as you said very powerfully, that we have to respect other people that have got valid other messages. That doesn't mean that we have to have any thought for people who are violent or who we see are going to challenge what is basically freedoms or routes to equality. So we have to have powerful views that don't have to necessarily accept some of those messages that others share. My son had a much longer time in India. He followed Amma, a spiritual leader in Kerala, for about 10 years. And I learnt a lot from what he shared. So first of all, though, thank you to Beju. It is a charm and privilege to have you as a friend. You are an example of why the world should have a free movement of people and should embrace different thinking, and why when we see nations claiming to be stronger, they're not strong if they're not allowing people and encouraging people to move and to support them. And along with you, one of the campaigns we championed was the freedom of people from South Asia to be nurses in the UK. And I'm sure there's discrimination in other countries, but there's intentional barriers in every country. When in fact we have, for instance, a set of hospitals that do not have enough people to actually provide the care. Yet we have people in our country from Kerala or from Sri Lanka or from other parts of India who badly want to work and provide that care. So that was a really valuable campaign. What do I say about Nehru? I know a fair amount about Nehru, having bought a book about him when I was in India myself. And clearly, you have to have a leader when you have a country being established after the dominance and unpleasant creation of the way that Britain was running India before. So to have been a leader for 17 years, all the way from the start of a country, which is a really difficult time, it embodies the fact that he reached out and listened to people. And that thread is a thread that's for all of our countries, not just for India. before I go into a few of my thoughts, I just want to underline the closeness of Cambridge to India in that Nehru studied here, obviously in a college that I wouldn't have got into at that time, or a lot of other people wouldn't have been able to study in. But that bridge between India and Cambridge is really important. Only about 6 weeks ago, a good woman called Rama Goyal, who'd been a student at Emmanuel, took me to a name that wasn't named after my family, 16 Herbert Street, which was only about 3 streets away, where Subhas Chandra Bose lived after World War I, and where he wrote a letter saying that he didn't want to be part of the British Indian civil service as it then was, and was probably, along with a number of Indians who studied in those decades, was actually activated by meeting people here. Another person linked to your neighbouring country, Chaudhary Rahmat Ali, developed the concept of Pakistan further when he was in Cambridge. And because he was an individual thinker, he was actually expelled from the country he helped formalise, and in fact lived and sadly died in Cambridge, and is remembered in a memorial only about 3 miles away from here. So each, whether it was Nehru or Rahmat Ali or Subhas Chandra Bose, they all took a different view, and they were entitled to have a different view about how to establish a country that served them. So there was much to be learned, and that much that they gained. I'm going to echo some of the same thoughts that you introduced and powerfully put across. That we are in a time of great danger, and that danger is largely coming from leaders, bad leaders, lazy leaders, leaders preying on nationalism and allowing violence in many countries. So the rise of what is, as you called, ultra-nationalism, isn't alone in India. It's happening in about 50 or 60 different countries. It's extremely powerful in Russia and in China and in America. It's powerful in Poland, or it was. It has been powerful there. It's powerful in Hungary, in Turkey. It's powerful in too many countries. I probably need a bit of water. It's sadly about the concentration of power. And that power is a severe risk, because power has been concentrated in the hands of only a very small number of people. One of my reflections is there are about 500 super rich people, and you include the person who runs and misuses Twitter. There are about 500 super rich people who use the fact that they can purchase the media, that they can dominate social media, that they can manipulate in the background. So there's a huge amount of risk from that. So I think in all of this, I will come back to the theme of what individuals can do. So one of the threads that people can do is that we can challenge. So we should challenge. We shouldn't be afraid. It's a sign of a country that's failing if people cannot actually say what they think. I'm a very proud member of the Labour Party, but letters were sent to councillors saying that they should not go on a protest about Gaza. That's not just recognising that there's an inhumane bombing of innocent people going on. That you have my own party in my own country trying to limit rights, and they're also limiting the rights, and we have a meeting tonight, they're limiting the rights to actually put down a phrase of words that 60 people in that room agreed and send it to the leader of our party. So we are in a time of small interferences with right. And the worst hit are the people at the bottom of the ladder, because they are the ones that are left with little power. So that concentration of power, the destruction of challenge. We have governments changing the rules so that they're not subject to scrutiny. We have newspapers that are owned by politicians or used as control. We have a lack of free media. I think our failure to buy newspapers is a big cost, because what it means is that we're not actually funding challenging journalism. We, as you said, we have to have freedom of thought and we have to have challenge. And Nehru believed in the fact that being challenged, or there being a plural society, meant that there was challenge of different ideas. So we are losing on media and scrutiny. I think we've got a failure to respect history. It's not a perfect phrase, and it is, I think, a bit of a change from what Santayana actually said. But those who ignore the lessons of history are destined to make the same mistakes. The events in Gaza are not suddenly happening this year. They've been happening since 1947. The events in a whole range of countries are not new. As you also mentioned, the power of technology, which has replaced talking, and is abused. The preponderance within too many countries where politics is more about emotion and about stirring up untruths. Because of the lack of challenge, there's in too many countries that there is now the ability of politicians to lie, the ability of within echo chambers of them to raise the risk of fanaticism. And just as an example of the challenge that is being failed to be addressed, no one's really addressing climate change. I can't speak for what's happening in India, but I went to America recently to see a 94-year-old aunt, and there's a whole range of issues just not being addressed. So for me, where does it start? Well, I think it starts with us. So I think everybody, including everyone that's listening to me now, providing you're still listening, every one of us has a power, and we've got to effectively just reflect and think, well, what is our role in that? Because the gap between international decisions, countries, communities, and ourselves is so big. But we can make a big difference. And one example I thought of was, for instance, if we made it our job to say, I'm going to link up with 10 people I know, and I'm going to communicate and share ideas, and I'm going to try and motivate them to get involved. That's a big power within communities. And I think that the honesty and strength of communities is the result of people getting active. If we look at some of the countries that are different, and I praise difference, why should every country in the world work to similar patterns? It's actually a weakness. Some of the countries that are strongest have actually independent communities within them, and they certainly enable there to be challenge. So just then thinking through about, well, what's one country there for all, or what's right about a challenge? You have to have the pluralism that you mentioned. There has to be judicial freedom. There has to be power shared. There needs to be the sort of continuing and solid focus on challenging inequality, and of making sure that every citizen feels that they are the same. We've got about 100 countries that are at risk of evil around the world in different ways, and we have to think about how we address that. It's clear that in the community of nations that we've got super powerful countries. We've also got what I would call, and it's a phrase that's not very well used, is in a way the white man's burden. English is the biggest language in the world, but should it be dominant? Why is it not the case that there's a multiple number of languages? So yeah, the British, the French, the Germans, the Belgians, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, they tried to conquer the world, and the legacy of that needs to be further rolled back. And clearly, India, well led, is one of the best opportunities to do that. And India, if India had a strong leader, they would also have a leader that would be providing leadership much wider amongst a lot of developing countries, because they would be creating an identity that people looked up to, and they would be looking outwards rather than looking inwards, which is the risk of so many countries. So I think we all have to expect more of our own country and challenge. And only in that way could we have a stronger world. So, where are the strong voices in the United Nations that are stopping Gaza? Where is an international reserve military strength that will stop people being murdered in their own country? Where there is a complete absence of that currently. So I could talk for on, but I won't. So we have to work out what we each contribute. So it starts with us. Our communities are at the centre, and ensuring that countries devolve power, so that, and if India looked at its constitution, how do we devolve the power? How do communities have power? How do the states have power? How do we actually diffuse it so that it isn't a country at risk? And then countries, there has to be an economy that works for all, and the economy is huge. The politicians have to be generous-spirited, as Nehru was. There's no room for the ugliness of some of the politics. We definitely have to rebuild the United Nations, and India has a big role in that. So I've just covered some of the issues that I think I linked to Nehru, and I linked to the forthcoming Indian elections. So I hope that we see more voices in the Indian Parliament who actually care about the principles of Nehru, and like you, can make a real difference for everybody. Thank you.
You said that Mr. Nehru was a dreamer, and all the prime ministers who become the prime ministers do have dreams. So how was Mr. Nehru different from all the prime ministers that have taken place? So right from Nehru to Mr. Narendra Modi. So how are they different? Thank you.
It's a good question. What is the difference between Nehru and the other prime ministers of India? You have to think about the time, because I discuss about those things in my speech. Because what was the situation? After a long rule and invasion, after the decolonization, we got freedom. What was the situation in India? Initially, our Prime Minister was standing, begging with a bowl to the other nations for giving at least one time food to the poor people of India. Everybody was waiting for the shipment coming from United States of PL 480, that wheat or some rice or something like that. So the first priorities, and for a pin, it had to be imported from the other side. Nothing was produced here. From a clean slate, from a zero position, he built India to that level. That is why I mentioned about the institutions. Now, the leaders are spending money to make temples. Nehru would have been, if he is around us, he would have been made educational institutions instead of temples, expensive temples. He would have been made hospitals for the poor people of India instead of spending huge money to build statues, big statues. That is the difference. And he always tried to make India a feeling of oneness. Now the problem is the dispensation themselves are trying to make hatred among the people. They wanted to make division among the people. Hate campaign is initiated by the rulers themselves. We cannot imagine such a situation. Why in every aspect, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is entirely different from Narendra Modi in all aspects, at all levels running the country.
Hi, good evening, sir. Thank you to the organizers for conducting this event and thank you for speaking both of the speakers. I had two questions primarily to you, Mr. V.D. Satheesan, sir. Number one is on the topic of Nehruvian socialism. Is the revival of it significant in today's India? Just purely on the economic factor of it? Is it important in today's India, especially when we have already opened up our economy? Do you think we can go back to that? And number two is also related to Kerala because I'm from Thiruvananthapuram and I moved here about a year ago to work. What is your vision for Kerala when we reach 2030? How do you hope to see Kerala in the future?
The first question I expected actually, because when I was talking about Nehruvian socialism, there may be a criticism that Congress themselves at the beginning of 90s, we shifted away from the Nehruvian principles. We were under global pressure. We could not stand alone for the economic liberalization. That is why he was talking about. Then we were not able to stand alone, to be isolated as a one nation, because the entire world was changing. That is why I stated that Nehruvian socialism is not a dogma, or a permanent stricture. It can be changed. But the question is, after the liberalization, we created wealth, we created jobs, we created the tax rate, many things. But the pertinent question is, how we spend that money? Whether there was a redistribution of equitable redistribution of money. That is a pertinent question. I can proudly say that we invested on Mahatma Gandhi Gramin Rural Employment Scheme. We invested on National Health Program, NRH, Rural Health Project. We invested on educational institutions. That was a clear redistribution of money. Then we came back to Nehruvian socialism. That is very important. We have to create wealth and jobs. But how we redistribute the money, equitable distribution of money, through the MNREGA scheme, that money reached the faraway villages, remote villages in India. Next one is 2030 about Kerala. We have been happy with the health and other educational aspects in Kerala for the last so many years. But in my opinion, our health standards and our education standards were at the European level at one time. But for the last 20 years, my opinion is that it's in a stagnant position. We are not upgrading. Now the brain drain is happening in Kerala. That is why you are studying in London. You are a student in London, so many others are studying here. Because our institutions are not the center of excellences, centers of excellences. We have to upgrade our higher education. If we work out, we will make Kerala as an education destination. From the third world countries and even from Europe, the students will come to Kerala as an educational destination. We have to think about, we have work on that, and we will make the educational institutions there. At the same time also the health standards, we have to improve the health standards. Then for the treatment, because our community is not an agrarian community, only the spices, the rubber and something like that. Kerala is not an agricultural state, Kerala is not an industrial state. Then how we are living? The NRIs are sending money, that is the backbone of our economy. So we have to think about that. In 2030, in all sectors, agriculture, industry, health, education, and the welfare activities. Now when you are settled here in Europe, you are not going to coming back to Kerala because your social securities are very safe in European countries, just like England and like that. That is right. But when a Malayali is going to Gulf country, he will come back. We are very much worried about that. The Gulf people are sending money to Kerala, but you are not sending money to Kerala. There is another problem. It will affect the economy of the state. So the welfare things, the insurance coverage and other social security measures should be taken very seriously. We have to make Kerala as a model welfare state. It's our plan. We will think about that. We will discuss about that.
Hello, I'm a student here in the Center of South Asian Studies. I wanted to connect today's discussion to something that I'm being taught here. So recently we are being taught about consumption is one subject we're studying on, and we're studying on this book called Liberalization's Children by Ritti Lucas. Basically it's a play on words on Midnight's Children of Salman Rushdie, which is basically that people after partition, these were the children who were heavily inspired by Nehruvian socialism of working towards development and all. But this book argues that there's a shift in the pattern of generally people's, especially the youth, how they conceive of their future. That it's more like less that they're not too. It's not that they don't care about the nations, but they are more focused on personal wealth and personal development than anything. And the right wing, unfortunately, is also capitalizing on that. So how can we, considering that the thing is on revival of Nehruvian socialism, how can we reignite a passion within the youth for Nehruvian socialism? Because there's generally a disdain towards the left, unfortunately, and the left parties haven't been able to effectively tackle that, especially in North India. So that.
Very good analysis. After the partition and after the independence, Nehruvian socialism ignited the youth of India very well. So we were marching towards an aim to a self-reliant India. Both levels, the agriculture sector, primary sector, and the secondary industrial sector. Now then the third was the service sector. Then the science, the ISRO, many other things. We installed many institutions all over India. That was a change that ignited the youth of India. Unfortunately, the shift from the Nehruvian principles, the socialist concern, socialist aspects, we gave up on the way. Then we reached a selfish attitude. towards create wealth. The lower middle class wanted to become upper middle class tomorrow. The upper middle class wanted to become the rich class in India. So the right-wing economists and right-wing policy makers and right-wing, far right, that was I mentioned about them, I criticized about the far right thinking. Far right thinking is not about the nation, not about the country, only thinking selfish. That created an ambience, not only in India, across the world. That type of selfishness is coming up. So, we have to follow the Nehruvian principles, that the socialist principles. Those are giving freedom to you. The individual freedom is there. The expression of your opinion, that right is there. You can freely think and work for the nation. That is the basic core principle of the Nehruvian thinking. And I mentioned about the planning also. The development should be on the basis of the priorities. Priorities. What are our priorities? We have to think about the priorities. Whether it is agriculture or the industry or the health. What are our priorities? We have to prioritize our things. Then only, if there is planning, is there, then only we can think about, we can make a development perspective in India. That deviation cost a lot of us. That is the thing you mentioned here. So we have to follow the revival. I said that was not a dogma, that was not a permanent stricture. We can adapt the flexibility in that. But the core principle is there for the common interest of the nation.
Just a quick question. You mentioned that lots of about the brain drain. Have you got any plan to stop that? I'm not supposed to ask that question, even though. Have you got any plan to stop the brain drain from the country?
Everybody has to move back to
We are thinking about that, seriously thinking about that, and making some research, and we are collecting some data about that. It is a serious thing to be addressed within a short time, because it will affect Kerala. Now, I think that Kerala will be like Italy or some other nations. Only the old people are there, just like that. When I went to an election, a by-election, I have collected some data from each booth, each places. So many persons has gone to Germany, UK, Australia, and Canada, everywhere. But one thing that some students went to some universities and good universities, but most of them went to some below average educational institutions without knowing what is happening there. They are not getting even the jobs there. They are from poor families. They are not able to manage their studies there. So we have been collecting data for the last 2-3 months. Then the first thing is there should be some institutions, best centers of excellence, and job, definitely, of course, job opportunities should be there. So we are seriously thinking about that. I hope that we should have a very good plan to address this matter.
Good evening, sir, everyone here. So my question to you, sir, is, and also to you, that why do you think that India is now ready to adopt Nehruvian socialism? As you rightly pointed out that in the 90s, Congress left Nehruvian socialism, the principles at that time. So why do you think that the situation now is the apt time for India to adopt the socialism right now?
This is the right time for an introspection. Right time. After 33 years, 91, we introduced economic liberalization, reforms, economic reforms. As I said earlier, we created wealth, we created job. There was lot of changes in India. But what is the final outcome? I have read a book recently regarding inequality, written by Thomas Piketty, who wrote Capital. The data he presented was very shocking to me. Not only in India, even in the United States, the differences between the inequality is increasing day by day. The half of the population of the world, their wealth, are keeping by 1% of the population in the world. This half of the population of the world's their wealth, it is equivalent to the wealth of 1% of the total population of the world. Like a third world country, India is facing very serious problem. The money, the wealth is accumulating in one place. The differences between the haves and have-nots are increasing. We can see at every aspects of our life that difference. The entire economic policy has been changed. In 91, we were forced to adopt such a policy under a global pressure. Now, for the convenience of the rulers, they are misinterpreting that economic reforms. They are completely privatizing everything. If a public sector undertaking, if is go by laws for a long time, and if you are not able to correct the losses made by the public sector, you can sell it. But the public sector undertakings which are still creating great profits are selling. Now in India, for example, the banking, if you are taking 50,000 or 500,000 as a loan amount, and if you are failing to remit the money for the consecutive 3 months, your account will be declared as NPA, non-performing asset. Then the debt tribunal, Surface Act, everything will be there and your property will be recovered. But in the new India, if you are taking 5 billion or 10 billion, you are not remitting anything. Your amount, your NPA will be right. And you can go to New York or Washington or Seychelles. Now, as gross, I cannot make it pound or a dollar. The NPA of the Indian banks are 1.5 million crores. You cannot imagine. That is 15,000 lakh crores. Is it correct? Any mistake there? 15,000 lakh crores. The government of India has to refinance to the banks. Otherwise the banks will be closed. Where can the government of India repay the amount, refinance the amount? From our pocket. Or by selling our prestigious public sector undertakings. That is also a deal. The valuation is only 100 valuation. How can you evaluate the Bharat Petroleum Corporation or Indian Oil Corporation? More than 20,000 outlets and so many refineries, you cannot value. But they are valuing and they are selling. That is what is happening here. So the economic reforms now have been transferred into other form of the far right selling of the property, common property, public property. So this is the very good question. Thank you, my sister. It is a very right question. This is the right time for introspection. So the relevance of Nehruvian socialism is increasing nowadays.
I could just add a few points, and it was good to hear from the only woman in the room. I think, I mean, power is about persuasion, so in a population as large as India, or if it was in the UK, you have to think about the whole population, and you have to come across with a range of messages. You have to have a diverse message. I think it is really sad that the younger people of today in many countries are going to be worse off than their parents. And I think, certainly, I mean, I don't understand much about India, just a bit. But in Britain, my generation has got almost all the wealth. It's got most of the political power because we vote. But just think in India compared to Britain, of the just range of people that don't go out to vote, that not even on the register, of the people that suffer different inequalities. I think it's got to be an all-embracing ability to actually create, in a democracy, the number of votes that are needed to make the difference. We are heading for a climate catastrophe, and that's going to hurt younger people. Younger people are not being given the same rights as older people. I think that an alliance has to be created where you actually, first of all, it's based on principle of tackling inequality, of having a fairer economy, but it has to get people, it has to get people's heart, and it has to motivate people, and it has to be local to change. And when the people who want change make power, they've got to, the first action of any good government is to share power. So we might have a change of government in this country, but if that government doesn't change the system of voting, doesn't change some of the basic institutions, it will just be consigned to the dustbin of history after 4 years. So an Indian government has to look at where power is and where too much power is and change that. And one of those areas is actually women, because how many powerful people in the world are women? The only leaders of countries are in Scandinavia, just about, with a few exceptions. So I hope that the opponents to a government who does need changing in India champion women and get their votes and earn their votes.
Yeah, just a question, two questions actually. So, revival of Nehruvian socialism, is this something which is particularly pertinent to the Kerala situation, or do you think that National Congress party is also adopting the same principle lines? And secondly, second question is that I think the next elections are coming in May next year for the Kerala Legislative Assembly. So what is is your strategy to win? For example, if we all want to vote Congress, so what's your key points there?
The Congress, in all India level, wanted to study very seriously regarding the outcome of the economic reforms which was introduced in the 90s. We introduced, but as I said earlier, that we distributed the money like that. So not only at the Kerala level, at the national level, we are seriously thinking about to mitigate the difference between these haves and have-nots. So you have to think about very seriously regarding the legislations and the pro-corporate attitudes of the governments. So our election manifesto will be on concentrating on this thing. And you ask about the Kerala election or the national election?
The Kerala legislative.
Kerala legislative election is only on 26. After the parliament election, we are going to plan very seriously about Kerala. What somebody said here, our perspective is about 2030. We are going to communicate with the people that what will be in Kerala, what should be in Kerala 2030. So, what changes should be made in each sectors, that a homework is highly needed. We are going to convene serious meetings with experts, and we have to collect the taxes seriously. Now the government miserably failed to collect the tax, and expenditure is too much. We are going through a huge fiscal crisis also. So there should be very good management, fiscal management should be done. Collect more taxes, then concentrate on the welfare schemes. Kerala is known for the welfare schemes. Now we cannot go with the new welfare schemes because of the lack of money. The treasury is bankrupt. So we have to think about that. After the parliament election, we need 2 years to plan everything. I need your support also, your suggestions. Yeah? Because the world are the global village. You can make suggestions, new ideas, new thinking. Because I am representing another generation, not too old. I never agree with that. But you are too younger than me. You can make more suggestions. Okay, thank you.
Again, thank you very much for all of you have come here, joined us, and of course Louis and our friend and leader, as I said, the socialist leader, the secular leader from Kerala V.D. Satheesan. Thank you for spending your time and energy to be with us. And today this, as I said, this is a restricted meeting. Tomorrow we have a rather open meeting at IISc University. If any of your friends or colleagues were happen to be rejected by when we were booking for this today's session, they can join us tomorrow at IISc University. We will start our session by 1 o'clock tomorrow, and it's going to be a longer session, so it will be we will run this up until 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock, or between 4 to 4:30. Again, thank you very much, all of us, joining in. Thank you.